It's great to see everyone. It's great to have you with us. We are so honored and pleased to have Senator Shelley Moore Capito with us today. We're going to talk about broadband generally, but the overall topic is the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act and the great advantage that we have in West Virginia because of the passage of that bill. Senator Capito took a leading role. I'll remind everyone that Senator McConnell supported the bill. It was passed in a bipartisan manner, and we are going to see lots of broadband activity in West Virginia as a result. So I realized the last time I did an introduction that I was way too long. Nobody particularly wants to hear from me. I think we particularly want to hear from Senator Capito. So in just a moment, I am going to turn the program over to Senator Capito. But let me say once again, what a pleasure it is to be with Senator Capito today. What an honor it is to have her serving as a senator from West Virginia. I have some pictures out on the conference room table that were taken in 1997 of Read Aloud Day at the West Virginia Legislature, which was put together and hosted by then Delegate Capito. So we certainly have a history of working together. I am thrilled that you were here. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to the conversation.
But I want to thank Steve. It's great to be down here at the chamber office. Fortunately for me and hopefully for my family, we've been home this week. We've really done some great things in terms of traveling the state. Spent yesterday over with the new president of Marshall, Brad Smith, and what I can't even begin to say what a dynamo he is and how exciting and excited everybody in Huntington and Marshall in the surrounding area is to have Brad in West Virginia. So that's an awesome thing. We also did went out to Richwood to talk to the mayor and others out there to talk about broadband, but to also do one of my Girls Rise Up programs, which I love to do to inspire that next generation. And so we've been really busy. We're going to go down and be in Charleston talking broadband all day today, and then probably mosey down to the Capitol and hear what the governor has to say tonight. But I wanted to just touch base, and I appreciate the chamber and everybody, Brian and Steve and everybody here, Robbie, who's new at the chamber, and Kaylin and Catherine and everybody, give me the opportunity to talk about broadband and how it's impacted by the bipartisan infrastructure package. As you know, Senator Manchin, Congressman McKinley, and I all three voted for this massive bill. The chamber supported this bill, and many, I would say probably all of you, that might be too big, but many of you supported this. And here's why. I mean, just last week, $500 million to repair bridges in West Virginia. We know we have dilapidated bridges. More money, formula dollars to help complete Corridor H. We just got an infusion of dollars, tens of millions of dollars for Corridor H. We also are going to be working wastewater and water. There's major investments there. And we know if we're going to get things like Nucor and other investments, we have to have the infrastructure to be able to do that. We also have some aging infrastructure that we need to repair. Our airports are going to get a shot in the arm. We're going to be doing work on capping wells and some more AML. So I basically, and you all might remember, started this conversation. We talked about it at the Greenbrier, started the conversation with the president and said, look, we can get bipartisan agreement on physical infrastructure. One of the key parts of this is broadband. Now, I've had my Capito Connect plan to sort of analyze where we've been falling short and where we need help, but also to make sure that we're looking at USDA programs, FCC programs, EDA programs, ARC programs, and we've been piecemealing more and more broadband deployment. But this is massive. This is I think, the opportunity of a lifetime for us to get to that last house. So in conjunction with that, what I did was launch just the other day, probably a week ago, a Share Our Stories, where I asked West Virginians to write in and tell me about their internet connections. I had no idea that when I would be talking to you today, that we'd have over 700 stories to tell. And you know what? They're not happy stories. They're stories of low service, that they're paying for service that's not getting delivered, that they can get no service, that their child is with children in school, their grandchildren have had to move away from where they live because they can't get service, they can't do school. So it's just, it's all of the above. And when I look at the locations, it's everywhere. It's more heavily, it seems to be more heavily weighted towards the center of the state, which would make sense because that's probably the more rural areas. But we're getting things from Jefferson County, which is right over there by, closest to DC. We're getting things from Bluefield. We know Southern West Virginia has a real challenge here. So I'm encouraging everybody to do this, because in order to really maximize this massive investment by the bipartisan infrastructure package, we have to have accurate mapping. We have to know who has service, who doesn't. And I'm interfacing with the Broadband Council and others to make sure we have that accurate mapping. And also, before we can spend any money on this, we have to have accurate maps. So the sooner we get the maps, the sooner we're going to get the money. So I'm here to help. We're here to help. My office is here to help. Lastly, I would say one of the differences between this year and last year is this is the first year that we've had earmarks. And remember those, we had them a decade ago and they got abused. And so this new Congress brought back the ability to earmark, which means that I, as a senator, can work with you all, and it has to be a nonprofit or a government entity, it can't be private, to work to earmark certain funding for certain projects. I was down at Marshall. Some of the things we've done have been in the med center, simulation labs, other things, wastewater and water projects for our small cities. It sort of runs the gamut. It's not open to everything, but I want you to keep that in mind. I know many of you, while you're probably mostly small businesses, privately owned, and members of the chamber, you're on all kinds of economic development boards in your regions. You're many of you office holders in your cities and towns and counties. Please remember that, keep this in mind as a way that we can really target some dollars towards your individual communities, because I think it can have an impact. It's all public. You can get on my website, or you can get on the appropriations website and see what I asked for. The only problem right now is we have not quite passed all of our bills, but when we do, those earmarks are going to come through. So that's basically what I wanted to talk to you today. I want to get questions and any kind of comments, how we might be able to help you. The focus being the broadband issue we've talked about. We know businesses are having issues with this. It also brings along, I went to Level 1 yesterday down in Huntington. They're a big contractor for the Navy. They have all kinds of cyber issues that are attached to this, which I'm sure many of you in your businesses do too. So that's a part of this that I think that we can help you with. So as you know, it's an honor for me to be your senator. It's great to be here at the chamber. I'm looking over at Steve here. He's been a great friend to me personally, but also in the chamber. When I'm going to go look at these pictures from 1997, I'm going to realize that maybe that was my natural hair color back then. And that's a joke. And then that we've worked together very, very well through the years. And as you all have been great supporters of mine, we want to support you. There will be a Supreme Court nominee coming forward. Those are always exciting times. And so I think that will take some of us. The question is, will BBB come back? It pretty much got ditched there at the end of the year by Senator Manchin and others. I don't think it comes back the way it was. We may look at certain things, childcare, parental leave, but these things all impact your businesses and your employees. So we need to hear from you. If that starts cooking up, we're going to ask you for your advice and input, and certainly the chamber in general. So I'll leave it as that. And I don't know if we're going to do questions or how we're going to go. We'll go with questions. Brian, there he is.
Well, thank you, Senator. Just to go ahead and remind everybody who wants to ask a question, we have two methods. You can type it into the Q&A box, or you can type it into the chat box. and then I'll go ahead and start reading those questions. But Senator, I just wanted to start off with one. With the COVID-19 pandemic hitting, we saw everybody basically leave the workplace and head home and have to work from home. How has that changed the dynamic about the importance of broadband? And is that building more urgency in Washington on the need to connect people?
Well, I think absolutely the availability of remote work and federal availability of remote work is something West Virginians can really capitalize on. But if we don't have the service, we can't do it. We know that. So in talking with Brad Smith yesterday, he's worked a lot on the Ascend West Virginia program to try to attract, which has been a major success. But he's done this with a lot of data to say what you need to do and how you need to do it. And he's told me he's working with internet service providers to make sure that when folks move in to remote work, that all of their needs on the broadband issue are being taken care of. And so I think that's exceedingly important that we work together on this. I think it's important as you look at the eastern part of West Virginia, the Panhandle and on down, like the 81 down into Pendleton County down there. People are going to be looking to move there if they're a federal worker. I mean, we already see that. And so I think it's important that we go to those remote areas and make sure that we have this. I think as I look at federal employees, I'm just talking federal employees now, but as I look at federal employees, they're not going back to work in Washington. And they like this remote work and this blended schedule that they are going to be looking for. That's a real opportunity, I think, for every part of our state, but particularly maybe if you split the state in half, vertically, the eastern portion of it. But it's still, it would be good for every part of our state for a federal worker. But then you look at a private worker. I mean, we have some people who wrote to us who said, I was trying to remote work. It didn't work. And it wasn't that the guy didn't have service. It keeps cutting out on him. Well, how frustrating is that if you're trying to do a Zoom or if you're trying to have a conversation back and forth, email back and forth, and you can't get a response in a timely fashion, that pretty much spoils it. So remote work, telehealth, education, tourism. Tourism is something you don't think about when you think of connectivity. But let's talk about the gorge. The new River Gorge has 30% more visitors now because of the national park designation. A lot of people come down there, they want to unplug and they want to, stay and go down the river or do the zip lines or just see the park in general, rock climb and everything. But when they get back to their cabin, they want to be able to plug in and stream something or do some work. And the vendors down there tell me that, if you don't have connectivity, your take up on where you're offering lodging or whatever, or a restaurant is much less.
Thank you. Another question, we're getting some actually coming in via text and email as well. But, when we talk about broadband, a lot of times we hear the complaints, people talking about the problems in service, but we also know we've made incredible progress in West Virginia. Can you talk a little bit about some of the good things that we're seeing with broadband as it's being deployed throughout the state?
Well, sure. I mean, I think there's a project going right now down in southern West Virginia in Logan and Mingo County. It's a consortium, a partnership with AEP and the counties and hopefully EDA to get a major, using the poles, getting a major deployment of broadband into that area. And we know that's a difficult area. I'm sort of agnostic as to how you get broadband, but I can tell you from the comments that I've read of the 700 stories, satellite is a problem for certain areas, and it's very expensive. So, into southern West Virginia, where what do they say? It has to be noon before you can see the sun because the mountains are so steep. You have to have, fiber is going to be what you're going to need. There, fixed wireless could be something else. We've done a USDA project, which is a project up into the Doddridge County area, over into close into Fairmont, across over to Buchanan, where again the schools, the county, the regional economic development folks, and USDA was able to put a $7 million grant into that, providing service for over 10,000 residents. Another thing that has worked with is the big power line that's coming, the power from Zayo and from Facebook. We need to maximize those opportunities. They have excess bandwidth on those. And I think those are places where we can, and I think we are capitalizing on. We have in Preston County, a provider there that has utilized some FCC dollars and EDA dollars to be able to get more service into Preston County. So, there's lots of good things going on. There's a regional development area over in the eastern side with John Tuggle's group that's working on a 5 and 6 county deployment using ARC dollars and others. So we try to help in any way that we can, but there are pockets of good, but I think everybody's tired of pockets of good. We've just got to make this an all out everybody. And that's what we're aiming for.
Well, thank you. So we're now getting several questions coming into the queue. The first one here, I believe it was maybe end of 2019 or 2020, excuse me. It's time's kind of compressed with COVID, but there was the R-W.Va auction through the FCC that was a reverse bid.
Right.
And there was a particular company that won most of those contracts, but there were several that bid on it. Can you talk a little bit about how those funds are being deployed and the oversight that's going into that?
Right. That's a rural, that's to go to rural America. I think West Virginia's stake in that was quite large from the providers that applied for those funds. Now, those are deployed over 5 years. They are, and it's a 2-step process. At this point, I'm not sure. I don't know if Matthew is on here. Matthew Plaster from my office is on here. He might be able to help me with this. How many of the providers have made it all the way through? I think it's just 2. The largest one, Frontier, has not made it through the second process, as far as I know. Is Matthew on? Okay, Matthew, can you clarify that?
Senator, I think he is listening, but I don't think he is on. Let me see if I see him.
Okay. Maybe
actually, here he is.
Okay.
I'm going to let him try to let him answer live.
You there, Matthew?
Doesn't look like it's allowing him. Hold on. So,
let me just tell you, Matthew is my point man in Washington. He's the one who's watching not just legislation, but what's going on there. And I certainly have a great state staff that you all know very, very well. But the R-W.Va has moved forward, and I can, if we'll check with Brian after this, and we'll get the more detailed information. I'll have Matthew call.
well, thank you. Another question has come in via text is, how do you plan to hold the Department of Commerce accountable for getting infrastructure dollars to the unserved and underserved areas?
That is a really good question as well, because whoever answered that question knows that the broadband dollars that are in the infrastructure bill, the first people in line are unserved and underserved. And I'm sure that person asking that question is saying, yeah, we've heard this before, because that supposedly is what the FCC programs are supposed to have gone to. And there hasn't been enough accountability there. So there will be much more accountability through Commerce Committee. I'm on Commerce. Gina Raimondo, who is the Secretary of Commerce, is very committed to this. She wanted it in her department because there was a debate as to whether it goes back to the FCC or if it goes under Commerce. And the president wanted it to go under Commerce in this bill. And so we're going to hold them accountable that it goes to underserved and unserved first. You can't up anybody's service until you hit the unserved and underserved. And you got to have the accurate maps. So this money's not going to flow out until we have the accurate maps. Because a lot of these, they call them census blocks. They might say, well, Steve has it. Steve is in your census block. And Steve and I are in the same census block. Steve has service, but I don't. But because Steve has it, they count the whole census block as having service, which is ridiculous because of course you're going to pick Steve because Steve's a lot nicer guy than I am. But You would pick Steve because he lives closer to the, to the main line. So anyway, we have to get the maps. That's a requirement. So now, yeah, Matthew says we're monitoring the money coming in, and Matthew will get back to the caller on the details of what that is. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That actually is a perfect lead into our next question, because you just talked about the maps. And so we've had a couple questions have come in about the maps. Is there a way that the county school systems can help out with mapping broadband and showing where it is and where it isn't? Because I think you've identified something I really didn't appreciate is that, same census block, it would look like there's broadband, but not everyone may have it.
Right. Well, I think the Broadband Enhancement Council here in the state has taken a very aggressive view on this. I think they are soliciting mapping details from everybody, from the providers, from the the commissions. And they're probably taking comments as well. And I think that's really smart, because a provider, if it's in their best interest, may I don't want to say they're going to not give you accurate information, but may give you different information than the actual person on the ground. I think we should use the school systems. As a matter of fact, I have a bill in that I got this from, it wasn't Doddridge County, Ritchie County. I went out there. They were doing a project out there, and it was really emanated from the school system. I don't know if you've ever been out there, but they have the most awesome football stadium I've ever seen. They got a lot of oil and gas dollars coming in. They don't take any dollars, I don't think, for education, but they have wonderful facilities. It shows you have a growing economy and a robust taxpayer in your county, what can happen. But they got together with CityNet and with the USDA and with ZAO and with the commission and with the county school board. And they decided they're going to connect everybody in that county. And the first people they're going to start with are the students, because they have one high school. They can identify everybody a lot quicker than maybe a larger area. So I put this bill in that's like connect students first, because if you connect all the students, you're pretty much going to get a grandmother or a mother who needs a telehealth, or somebody, a parent or a grandparent who's going to be working remotely. Not every house has that home dynamic, but many of them do. And so I think that I think it's a really smart strategy to get the students first. We see all of the reports of issues around learning deficits and speech deficits and other things with our learning with our children. So I'm trying to remember who I think Klobuchar is my co-sponsor on that bill. We haven't made it through, but I think the concept is really good. So thank you to Ritchie County for that.
Thank you. Just kind of going back to a high level picture, one question we just got in was, what do you view as the largest hurdle right now to continuing to get broadband to all West Virginians? Obviously, there's a lot of money coming into West Virginia due to the infrastructure bill. Again, thank you for your strong support of that bill. But what do you believe could be still the biggest hurdle to connecting everybody?
I think, I asked one of the folks that work with the service providers one time, what's the problem? Well, the problem's time and money. Well, you know what? Money's here now. The problem, I think, has been obviously the private providers are going to go where they've got some economic model, some return on investment. If you have to go 7 miles out to catch 1 or 2 people, the return on investment's not there. It's expensive to lay fiber. So I think that's why you see creative ideas like if you're gonna work on a guardrail on an interstate and you have to dig it up, then make it available to pre-bury fiber, and have it ready. They call it dig once. You don't have to keep digging. And so I think the money is it. I think I get tired of the terrain issue, but I do think it's a challenge because it makes it more expensive to build. We haven't had enough competition, but we see that changing. I mean, the city of Charleston just opened up competition, I think, for a new provider. And I learned as I looked at the 700 comments that there are smaller providers around the state. It's not all Suddenlink and Frontier. and those, but those are the predominant players, obviously, right now. But and they showed up in all the comments, I'll say that. But I think that with these smaller providers coming in, I think that's going to be huge. I mean, if you look out at Hardy County at Hardy Telecom, they do a great job. They're a rural provider. They're a co-op. They run a really smart ship out there. We need more kind of localized investors like that. But I think focusing this on the unserved and underserved is going to be the key, and then the accountability issue of that.
Well, that's a good transition into another question we just got. Having lived in Putnam County last year through the ice storm, friends and family in Huntington. The next question is, you mentioned burying fiber when you're digging up a guardrail. Mm-hmm. As we're burying fiber, does that open up an opportunity for the power companies to at the same time be burying some of their lines? We have a lot of rough terrain in the state, which adds complexity to that. I'm not sure that's something you want to weigh in or. But.
I mean, you would think so. Yes. I don't know the economics of that. It must be a lot because we don't have as many. I mean, I live right up off of a hill here in Charleston. If we have a storm or a lot of wind, we know we're going to lose our power. I mean, that's just inevitable because something's falling. Just one time it was a tree in my front yard, one of my trees. But so, I think that probably makes sense. I'll have to leave that to the power company. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what the economics of that are, but eventually you'd like to get there, but at some point it's not, it's probably not feasible everywhere at all.
So the next question we have here, this is a specific question, but it could really apply to probably a lot of similar situations. So the question is, Camp Horseshoe has a fiber line running right by the property, and the cost to hook up is about $60,000, but they don't qualify for the E-rate program. Is there an option for a program such as what we're talking about here in Camp Horseshoe, but probably other situations in West Virginia to help get the funding to make that connection?
The short answer there is yes. The longer answer is if that person could call our office and talk to Matthew and give us some of the specifics, we might be able to help with that. We've been able to do. I don't want to overpromise here and underdeliver. We might, but yes, they would definitely qualify for that. And that's an example of an underserved community. And $60,000. I mean, come on. It's sometimes I think these prices get thrown out because they don't really want to do it. So they're going to give you some outrageous, sum of money to get it done. And of course you're not going to do it. Let me just say one other thing on the new program, the structure of the new program, because one of the reasons I think that some West Virginians don't take it up is the expense. There's going to be a subsidy there for people at the lower end, like there has been during COVID, to subsidize your monthly broadband bill. I think it's $50. It might be $35, it might be $50. That's going to push the companies to do some low-end plans, and it also will help people be able to afford this in the long run. So there is a broadband enhancement for people who are financially challenged, but who have kids in school, who want to telework, who want to telehealth, just like the rest of us.
I just want to give a quick reminder. Anybody who does have a question, put it into the Q&A box and put it in the chat box. I still have a couple that have come in via text and email, but just wanted to give that reminder to everyone who's listening. The next question, we just had Brad Smith become president of Marshall University, and Brad certainly comes from a technology background as into it. We have Gordon Gee up in Morgantown at WVU. So we really have a lot of horsepower right there. Is there something that higher education can be doing to play a bigger role in expanding broadband throughout West Virginia?
Short answer, yes, absolutely. I was just with Brad yesterday. We had a very good lunch. I think he's going to be phenomenal for Marshall and the community. He's very committed to this. It was funny. We went up to see the aviation maintenance program up at Tri-State Airport. Sorry about that if you're on Tri-State Airport. And he ran into a guy that he hadn't seen in 40 years, that he grew up in in Wayne County with. I mean, he is loving coming home and remaking some of those connections. And so I think, that's a nice little anchor. He knows, I think it's teaching to the jobs of the future, and the jobs of the future is internet. I mean, you have to have connectivity. There's no way around it. And there shouldn't be. And so he's, I think he's going to bring all that expertise. And hopefully, I think what he's looking at as well is he has so many connections in the country to really shine a light on us as West Virginia. But you have to have the students, you have to have, they're doing cyber down there, and in Huntington, we're working with them on a Homeland Security provision, and because I do the appropriations for Homeland Security on cyber, and it's dark web stuff I don't know anything about. I guess I don't really want to know about what's on the dark web, but it's a lot of that where you find people who are trafficking drugs or trafficking people or children or all kinds of illegal things. And so, he wants to see that and expand it, because he knows that that's, the wave of the future. And he's into remote work. I mean, he dedicated a lot of his personal resources to get this Ascend program off the ground. And so he's very, very excited about that.
Well, another question that just came in, and I think it's very timely. I'll just go ahead and run aside. The other day, I was walking across the street and I noticed that my phone no longer says LTE, but it now says 5G. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of, we've talked so much about broadband, but also, more wireless service throughout West Virginia and higher speed service on your cell phones?
Well, I tell you, I don't know if you all have noticed, but 5G's kind of gotten into a controversial area, which just burns the heck out of me. Because I sit on Commerce, we have had hearing after hearing on 5G and how important it is, and that China's going to kick our butt on 5G, and that's going to, impact business and international relations, and we've got to catch up. So we've been trying to do that as a body to incentivize 5G and move it, move that next generation technology more broadly in the country. And now there's developed this conflict between the FAA and 5G providers, because they say the bandwidth is going to interfere with what's going on in the air in terms of the instrumentation of planes. Well, none of us wants to be on a plane that's getting interfered with. Especially if you're flying around West Virginia, if it says you're at 10,000 feet, you want to make sure you're not at 5, because that could be bad. And so, but what burns me about this is we have had hearing after hearing, and why all of a sudden does the airline, and I guess they would say it's not all of a sudden, but this is a detail that needs to be worked out. We thought it was worked out. And so I think there is a lot of protections, I think, on the bandwidth from 5G to what the airlines are moving forward on. So we need to get this straightened out, because we want to have 5G everywhere. And so I see that people are starting to talk about 6G, and I didn't even realize what G meant, but it's generation, I guess, is 5th generation, 6th generation technology. So this is critical to our country's and West Virginia's economic development. And I'm glad to know you got some 5G. I don't know, certain areas like New York City and stuff have 5G all the time.
Senator, we have time for just one more question if you do. So let me ask you, do you want to take one more? Or do you want to go ahead and start to wrap up here?
I'm good. Okay.
So the last question we had is, you've talked about your role on the Commerce Committee.
Right.
What are all the steps that we can be doing, with your role on the Commerce Committee to support you, but also to keep pressure on the administration going forward to make sure that we're getting everything we can out of what's been passed through the infrastructure plan and all the funding coming into West Virginia?
Well, I think, in Commerce, we do oversight. And I'm always, it's a large committee, very large committee, but the breadth of the responsibilities of Commerce is very large too. It's aviation, it's NCAA, it's telecom, it's all kinds of different subject matter, which makes it exciting because, it's always something different. It's got travel and tourism. I went out with Senator Rosen, who's a Republican or a Democrat actually from Nevada. We went out to the Consumer Electronics Show to see all the new cutting edge technology. And some of the space things that are going forward have a West Virginia component to them, which to me is really exciting. So I would like for you all to keep your eye on what you see is going to help the next generation West Virginian stay here, work here, and prosper here, and how I might be able to influence that on the Commerce Committee. I mean, we will do oversight. This administration is, no surprise, very heavy on regulations. I'm also on Environment and Public Works, and we see regulation after regulation coming to the point where it's very difficult to meet those regulations. That's a different reason why they're doing that and what they're trying to focus on. But the administration in general has a philosophy that the more regulation, the better service. And I have a different philosophy. I mean, I think we need to let the market ride. Here's something that I would really be interested to hear from everybody on, because this is going to come in my committee, is this whole breakup of the big Google, Facebook, and to see is that, do you have any thoughts on it? I mean, I have some thoughts on it, but I'm not sure they're quite the best thoughts. I mean, I haven't gotten into it deeply. I don't want to curb innovation when you think that a guy in his garage, like Steve Jobs, can create something which is now a multi-trillion-dollar company in iPhones. It's global. I mean, you know, same with Bezos and Amazon. I mean, you know, he's schlocking books out of his mom's garage, and the next thing you know, he's buying a spaceship and going to space. I mean, so, you know, that's the American dream, I think, is to be innovative, to be successful. But when it crowds everybody else out and people are no longer shopping local, or people can't, you know, get products, that crowds out our small businesses. So if you have opinions on that, that's going to come to Commerce. I would really like to hear. That's a huge topic, but it's something I can't really get a feel for what people think. I think it's all over the board. But I want to thank you, Steve, for the opportunity, and Brian, good questions. Everybody, you all had good questions. I hope I see you soon, and I hope everybody stays well and warm. It was 11 degrees when my new state director, who many of you know, Bill Bissett, took his trash out. So imagine that. Anyway, thank you all very much.
Senator Capito, I want to thank you so much for not only a wonderful presentation, but for taking so many questions and answering them so well. I know I speak for everyone who's on this call when we say we really are proud of you. You represent West Virginia so well. West Virginia has been a lot in the news. We know that you have a lot of tough issues that you've had to deal with in the Senate of the United States. When I hear from my colleagues around the country, they often say, oh, if we had a Senate delegation like you have in West Virginia. So thank you. I know you've had some fastballs thrown at you, some curveballs thrown at you, and some very difficult issues to deal with. We appreciate you. We appreciate the way you represent West Virginia. So thank you for the tough votes that you have cast here recently. And thank you for your leadership. And thank you for the way you represent us in the national media. We are so pleased to have had you with us today. And thank you for teeing up that last question. It's one that we are asking ourselves too. I remember you being in the audience when Jeff Bezos came to West Virginia to announce that Amazon would be building a location in Huntington. And that was the start of great things, but a lot has happened since that announcement, and we've got a lot to think about here. So thank you again. It was wonderful to have you with us, and thank you to the people on this call who have listened intently and asked us such great questions.
Yeah.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.